Welcome back to the channel. It's been a while. Still been busy with random projects and this and that, and I thought I'd show you kind of a tool that I kind of use around the property and also a project. You all know I like my 80s junk and engine swaps, so well, this is a 78 Clarke skid steer that has a Toyota 3TC 4-cylinder swapped into it, along with a bunch of other random bits that I had lying around the shop. There's a bunch of Volvo stuff in there, of course, and yeah, I'm gonna do a little walk around for you and move some piles of dirt. And yeah, we bought it mostly just to clear snow, build jumps, lift engines out of cars, everything like that. It's super handy. Definitely a work in progress, and it's definitely old and clapped out, but it does the job. So yeah, I'll give you a walk around and hope you like it. All right, check out this little unit. I got it for $1,500, and the engine was actually already in it. In this case, I did not put that engine in it. That's what it came with. It barely ran, had hydraulic problems, cooling problems, electrical problems, every kind of problem you could think of, which is why it was $1,500 bucks. But now I've got it running pretty good. I mean, I can, you know, run it for a couple hours, and you know, you just got to be a little slow with it. The old girl, the pumps are tired and everything else like that. So, but yeah, you know, bought a seat from Princess Auto because the old one was thrashed. Put a gauge pod up there because, you know, Amazon special, you got to have carbon. The fuel tank's actually behind the seat. You can see it there now. The old fuel tank on these, see if I can pan, is actually at your feet. That giant plastic thing down there is the old fuel tank. And it was full of crap and rust and varnish and 30-year-old, what I assume used to be gasoline. And there's no way I was going to save it. So I just got a buddy to weld me up some 1/8" aluminum and weld it together. And now the gas tank's behind the seat. Which one's worse, having it at your feet or behind you? I don't know. I pressure tested it quite thoroughly to make sure that it wasn't going to leak, because obviously you don't want a bunch of gasoline where you're sitting. So so far so good. I'm sure everyone will tell me that it's a death trap, but you know, the most of them are like that. So, or sit in an old 70s Ford and see what the gas tank is in the cab with you. People probably curious about this in the back mostly. So got a pod filter to lose some horsepower there. I got an old turbo hat from my very first Volvo. It just happens to fit on the top of the carb perfectly, and then I lift it off to squirt some gas in there to prime it when it's a little grumpy in the mornings. Take out the retaining nail there, and there you go. So that is a Toyota 3TC from like an 82 or 3 Corolla, I think. I'm not a Toyota guy. Like I said, this is just what came with it, and someone had swapped it in there already. So it runs really well. I don't rev it very high because obviously you don't want to overspeed your pumps. But so it's not really being used to its full power potential, but for just moving this thing around, it works great. And I'm assuming it got swapped in there just, they have like an old V4 Wisconsin air-cooled thing in them in this year, and those things are hot garbage. So I'm assuming that blew up, and the guy needed something to make his skid steer work, and he had probably a rusted out Corolla with a good motor, so that's why it ended up in there. I've got a big radiator out of some car, I can't remember what it's from, but slap that in there because this was an air-cooled one. And then you got the hydraulic cooler in there as well. A couple big fans on a thermal switch, so that cycles on and off. And yeah, it never goes above 180 now. It's a good little unit. Fuse panel, nothing fancy there, just a couple relays. It's a super basic. I rewired the whole thing. It was a super basic setup, but now it actually, you know, has keyed power and an alternator that charges. It's got a Volvo alternator, actually, and it has a bunch of power cables from a Volvo V70. It's got a Volvo thermostat in the Toyota motor, actually, because it fit, and it had no thermostat before, which is, I think, part of the reason it had cooling problems. And the thermostat was full of rust, so that probably didn't help anything. Yeah, I did a full service on it, did all the filters. These ones are actually chain drive. Well, not chain drive, but chain. The hydraulic motors are kind of up in this area, and then there's a couple sprockets and chains, and then it goes from this way to this way. There's some big chain in here, and that's how it drives all four wheels, and, you know, one or more than less, and that's how you turn. Skid steer. But yeah, tightened all that up, gave it a fluid change, and fixed the tires up, and she's been running pretty strong lately. So these are actually a neat little motor. Just reading off the internet here, saying from 73 to 85 they were the 3TCs, 1.8 liter, anywhere from 70 to 105 horsepower. So probably way too much horsepower for this thing, but like I said, I'm not using it to anywhere near its full potential, which is kind of sad, but like I said, it was in there when I bought it, so why am I going to change it out and put something else in it? It is technically a Hemi. You can see spark plugs in the middle there. If you ever see one of these cylinder heads off, they do have kind of a hemispherical combustion chamber, so technically a mini Hemi. There is a lot of power potential there. I know there's a ton of Toyota guys and different class racers and everything else that does, you know, exhausts and intakes and side draft carbs and all this other stuff and boring them out. And yeah, they're a pretty potent little mill, as far as my limited Toyota knowledge tells me. But it runs great. It's bone stock as far as I can tell. Still got the factory carb on it. Bit of a nightmare. It runs. I'm not touching it. There's vacuum lines and electric chokes and actuator valves and bleeds and all this other stuff that I'm not going to touch until I have a problem. And then when that happens, I'll probably rip it off and put a Weber or something simple on it. But yeah, I'm not changing anything other than the oil, maybe, because it runs great. So did a cap and rotor and plugs and clean the points, because yeah, it has points. And it just fires up first crank every time. So pretty happy with it. But yeah, neat little engine. I got my control center here. You've got water temp, volts, lights. I've got oil pressure, hydraulic pressure, hour meter, key switch, start button. That's it. Well, this switch is for the alternator because I didn't have a light with the right resistance to run the exciter circuit, so I just manually excite the alternator. Super janky. Obviously you know where that one's from. Focus. Yes. Gotta represent. Well, yeah, we'll fire it up here and drive around a little bit. Alternator. There she goes. I just got throttle down here. It does have a governor too, but it kind of works sometimes. Lights. It's not too loud. It's got a muffler on it. That runs good. Safety first. hopefully you guys like that as something different. I don't know, it's kind of fun. Like I said, it's coming really handy around the property just for building bike jumps, and you know, just anytime you need to lift something heavy or pull something, you know, let's fire this up and away you go. So far it's been pretty good. The hydraulic system, like I said, is tired. I might have to look into that a bit more. I think after a few hours it starts getting air in it, so I probably got to change some suction hoses and stuff. I'm not a heavy duty mechanic, so I'm kind of learning, you know, about hydraulics and hydrostatic and everything else like that as I go. But so far it's just like a Volvo, just dirtier and greasier and heavier. Yeah, would I change anything? I'd like to get the governor working a little bit better, because right now sometimes you'll have to kind of throttle it up. You probably heard it. When you put a lot of load on it, you kind of have to give it some more gas. With a governor, obviously it'll try and keep the engine at a set RPM. The original Wisconsin governor setup has been grafted onto there badly, and it doesn't really work. So I'd like to try and find a solution for that, just so you set it at 1 RPM, and no matter what you're doing with the load, it'll just keep the engine there. It burns quite a bit of fuel. This gas tank's probably about 35 liters, and it'll chew through that in probably 3 hours. I don't know what a good fuel economy for a skid steer is, but that seems like a lot for me. But it is also a bigger engine probably, so it's, for the amount I use it, it's not really a thing. Yeah, other than that, it's been great. It was a fun little project, something different to learn on, and you know, I've got a backhoe attachment for it as well, so I might dig some more trenches. But for now, it's just, yeah, play around with it and move some dirt. It's just a kid in a giant sandbox. So anyways, thanks for watching. See you next time. Ow. Oh, my knee. It's fine. I'm getting old.